As I mentioned earlier, we are to discuss irregular, unnecessary, excessive, extravagant, and unconscionable expenditures. So for this topic, we need to emphasize that government funds shall be utilized in accordance with the appropriations authorized, meaning the approved budget for a specific purpose, meaning if the intention of this budget is for this specific expenditure, then that should be disbursed in that specific expenditure. And of course, very important to comply with applicable laws, regulations, and rules of the government. Always remember that all agencies of the government shall strictly adhere to the provisions of RA 9184. So once we say RA Public Act 9184, it refers to the Government Procurement Reform Act. It's IRR, or implementing rules and regulations. And when we say GPPB, that is Government Procurement Policy Board guidelines in the procurement of the goods, meaning procurement in the expending in the acquisition of goods, infrastructure projects, and consulting services. According to Section 33 of the Presidential Decree number 1445, prevention of irregular, unnecessary, excessive, or extravagant expenditures of funds or uses of property, power to disallow such expenditures, the Commission shall promulgate such auditing. The Commission being referred here is the Commission on Audit, shall promulgate such auditing and accounting rules and regulations as shall prevent irregular, unnecessary, excessive, or extravagant expenditures or uses of government funds or properties. So first, irregular. When do we say that an expenditure is irregular? So if it is incurred without adhering to established rules, regulations, procedural guidelines, policies, principles, or practices of the government, meaning if it is in contrary to government rules and regulations, then that becomes irregular. If it does not conform with the prescribed usages and rules of discipline, then that is when we say that it becomes irregular. So, irregular expenditures are transactions conducted in a manner that deviates. Remember, if it deviates or it violates or depart from or which does not comply with the government standards being set, then that becomes what? Irregular. So what are examples of expenditures na irregular? So I have provided that honoraria paid to members of BAC, Bids and Awards Committee, and TW Technical Working Group in excess of the rates provided for under DBM Budget Circular number 2004-5A dated October 7, 2005, and procurement activities pertaining to contracts not yet awarded to the winning bidder. So remember that there is a specific amount of honoraria to be given to back members and TWG. So ang una to permente that an honoraria may be paid, remember this, only for successfully completed procurement projects. Meaning, for example, na ay tulo ka book bidder and then na-award na yun siya to a certain bidder katong pinaka-competitive and responsive na bidder. So usually this refers to katong na ay lowest price. So as mandated in the Government Procurement Reform Act. So once it is awarded, once it is completed, successfully completed procurement na, then that's the time na kanang mag-provide og honoraria. So prior to that, bawal ang paghatag og honoraria. Another example, grant of Christmas bonuses, cash gift, and fringe benefits to consultants. So remember, consultants and to members of the board who are not salaried officers of the government because dili pwede na maghatag ta sa consultant og Christmas bonus, cash gift, because they are not considered employees of the hiring agency, meaning there is no employer-employee relationship. There are a lot of examples of irregular expenditures. You could look that into Annex A and B of COA Circular 2012-003. So that is irregular expenditure. Basta timaan na to pag irregular meaning wala siya ni comply sa kung unsa ang giingon sa balaod. Next, unnecessary expenditure. So kanusa siya may mong unnecessary if it does not pass the test of prudence or in law, so this is a law term, diligence of a good father of a family, meaning denoting non-responsiveness to the exigencies of the service. Once we say unnecessary, meaning dili siya essential or pwede ra gud na dili nato siya i-dispense or dili nato siya paliton kay wala man it cannot cause loss or damage of property kung dili nato siya paliton. So remember that the mission and thrust of the agency incurring the expenditure must be considered in determining whether an expenditure is necessary or not. So, if kani ang mandate sa isa ka government agency na dili niya kailangan mo palit ani depending on the nature of the government agency, then there is no need to expend such kanang procurement or such disbursement. So, kanus aman makonsider ang isa ka expenditure na unnecessary. So, example, replacement of serviceable structure or equipment, kanang balik-balik na repairs and equipment na considered dili na siya gyud kana economic ang pag-repair kay perminti mag-breakdown and still even after repair kay non-use lang gihapon siya. So, mo mga example. Another kanang mag-hire tag consultant na ang function kay redundant sa katong mga empleyado na naanadaan. So, bisking pag wala ng consultant, kay naman tong main na mga people na nagabuhat sa iyahang job, wala nahulog na redundant kung magbayad pa kag sweldo or magbayad pa kag honoraria sa isa ka consultant. Or purchase of high-end or expensive models or brands of electronic gadgets. So, dili man necessary, di ba, na super high-end or super luxurious or super expensive because for as long as it capacitates or if for as long as the nature and the function or the reason for purchasing it can be substantiated, then enough na siya. Pero, there are times na pwede basta ma-justify lang. Kanang grant, pong mag-grant kag overtime for work pero dili man urgent ang katong iyang deliverable dili man urgent di man siya kailangan na dali-dalion di man siya kailangan na pagkaugma na adayon it can be done on the regular working hours so no need of the overtime so that becomes unnecessary. So again, ang yung timan-an, pag unnecessary, meaning dili essential na expenditure. Next, excessive. Kanus man siya mahimong excessive expenditure? When the expenses incurred is immoderate and exorbitant price, meaning pertigyong mahala. Expenses which exceed what is usual. So, for example, 200 pesos ang usual na gipalit siya og tag 1,000. That becomes excessive, which are unreasonably high and beyond just measure or amount. So, nasubraan siya kamahal. So, example, kanang cash advance, granting of cash advance in excess of estimated budget or kanang overpricing of purchases. So nalantay limitation. So kanang mga in excess of current prevailing market price by 10% from the purchase item. So pag mosobra ganig 10% sa prevailing fair market value or market price, then that becomes excessive. Another example is kanang excessive expenditure, kanang sobra-sobra na expenditure for the celebration of Christmas. anniversary, and other occasion. Or kanang mag-install ka og another camera in place with existing functional camera or excessive allowance kanang tay magpa trainings and seminars kanya sobra-sobra kaayo ang ilahang allowances, then that becomes what? Excessive expenditures. So again, once we say excessive expenditures, these are disbursements that are beyond normal. Ang susunod, extravagant expenditures. When we say extravagant expenditures, meaning ka ng mga garbuso ng mga expenditures. So those incurred without restraint, judiciousness, or economy exceed the bounds of proprietary ka ng moderate, prodigal, lavish, luxurious, grossly. Bahagaina, we have excessive expenditure. Once na kanang grossly na siya, meaning sobra pa sa sobra, and then injudicious, then that becomes extravagant. So kanang term na grossly, that bridges the gap between extravagant and excessive. So sa may example, kanang mag-purchase ta og wine, liquors, cigars, and cigarettes. Pero nata exemption. Pwede siya, dili siya extravagant when it is served during state functions and government-sponsored international conferences and conventions. Or ka na magpalit ta og decorative lamppost and other similar items or fixtures. So, di man kailangan na inanayod ka sobra ka mahal. Or example ka nang magbayad tag renta, magbayad ang government og rent for expensive halls or rooms in luxury hotels or restaurants used for meeting alone. For mag-meeting ka ng liman, siguro necessary na ka nang magbayad tag renta for a very expensive room. So kana. Pero again, may exemption kay if it's used for international conventions or meetings, then probably it could be justified. Or mag-conduct og out of town meeting na pwede raman siya mag-meeting sa office premises. So kana, that is also extravagant. So again, what makes extravagant different from excessive is that it is grossly excessive, meaning sobra kaayo na expenditure. Last, unconscionable expenditure. So, kani siya na expenditure, these are unreasonable and immoderate, and which no man in his right sense, okay, note, no man in his right sense would make, nor a fair and honest man would accept as reasonable. Meaning, if you are to judge these expenditures, normally you wouldn't do that because normally it's not normal na kanang buhaton nimo siya. So if it's kana ganing it's unexpected of you doing that, then that becomes unconscionable. Those incurred in violation of ethical and moral standards, then that is unconscionable, meaning unconscious. So, ang example ana, um, live-in seminars in five-star hotels with significant number of participants and unreasonable period of time. So kanang mura dili siya kanang dili na siya ethical or kanang five-star hotel gyud ang kayang iyahang pag-disbursan for that specific seminar, or kanang overpricing of significant amount exceeding 100% of the current and prevailing market value. So for example, ang normal lang ana is 10,000. Kipalit nimo siya at 20,000. That exceeds 100% of the current and prevailing market value. Or gipalit mo siya 20, exceeding man no, pwede gipalit mo siya 25,000 or 30,000. So, kanang grant of exorbitant and unreasonable bonuses, allowances, or fringe benefits to government officials, employees, members of the governing board. So, kanang mag-grant po tag sobra-sobra. So, these are examples of unconscionable expenditures. So, sa ganito, irregular, meaning does not conform with the rules and regulations of the government. Unnecessary, meaning that is not essential. Excessive, meaning sobra. Sobra ang paggasto or kanang exceeds the usual. Next is extravagant, meaning grossly excessive. And then unconscionable, those expenditures that are kanang dili siya normal for a sound person for a sound person with a sound mind na mogasto for that specific disbursement. Now, I would just like to reiterate the requirements for disbursements. Number one, there should be what? Availability, again, of the allotment or budget. And that should be what? Certified by the chief accountant. Next to it is the availability of funds. So, kung appropriation, i-budgetan siya, meaning na siya'y pundo. And that is certified by the chief accountant. Next, kung pundo, dapat naapoy available cash. Still, certified by the chief accountant. Legality. So once you say legality, meaning it conforms with the existing rules and regulations of the government. Approval, the disbursement is kanang to be approved by the head of the agency. As I've mentioned, for example, the disbursement vouchers of the NSC or of any school should be approved by the head of the agency, which is the college president. So supporting documents. So we will have that. I will give an example referring to or having the reference COA Circular 2012-001. So supporting documents will attest the validity of the claim. So for example, sweldo. Sweldo sa mga tao, dapat na DTR, dapat na accomplishment report. So these are supporting documents. So that's the end for this discussion. Thank you and God bless.